Okay, now we're heading into the back section of the garden. This is actually the more sunny location in the garden. It's also the newer portion of the garden. It has been here a couple years now. On the top bed, I've got our corn patch growing. This is bodacious and precocious in here, and they're both at about the same point, even though one is earlier than the other. And again, it's just a strange year. I'm just glad we're getting corn, and we are. And the plants are shorter than they should be. And again, that's a function of this really cool summer we've had. But they've been producing, so even though the stalks are a little bit stunted, the production of the seed is not, and I'm just not going to worry about it. So I take my wins when I can get them. And this year, getting corn with the cool weather we've had is something short of a miracle. So I'm really happy. And in fact, this is much better production than what we got last year, and we had a better weather year last year, so I think I like the location, actually. And then right next to it is the bush bean patch. It's starting to look a little bit ragged because I've been picking on it pretty consistently, a couple days a week, and in doing so I tend to kind of push the plants around, and they get a little beat up towards the end of the harvest season. So I probably got about another 2 weeks of harvest off of this patch before it's going to be done for the season. But we're getting some good production out of it, and enjoying them because we didn't get much pole beans, as I mentioned earlier. This middle bed has the sugar snap peas, which is Cascadia, growing on it, and I've actually stopped harvesting it, and it looks a little rough there, but and you can see lots of big pods on it. I've stopped harvesting because I'm at a point now where I am focusing on seed production so that I can save seeds for next year's garden. I've got lots of really nice big fat pods that are swelling up and will produce some good seed for us. Usually I use this vertical grow support for cucumbers. I decided to use it for the snap peas this year and grow the cucumbers over on the other supports. I think I like it better for cucumbers, though. It was a little difficult to get the peas to lean over and go sideways, where the cukes are more than happy to do that. So it works, but probably isn't optimal. I'm not sure I'll do that again. Before I had underneath it the turnips, but those are all gone at this point, and I've not planted anything underneath it because it's so shaded at this point. In the middle of the bed is a section where some onions and carrots were, but those have all been harvested, and it's open at the moment. And then the rest of the bed on this section is in the determinate or semi-determinate tomatoes, and we've got lots and lots of legend tomatoes on. So if I can get a good, there we go. I'll get my aim here so that you can see what's happening in here in this plant. Lots of tomatoes in here. These are a fairly loaded bush. One of the nice things about Legend is it produces in this climate really well and is resistant to blights and other infections. So it's a good tomato for this Pacific Northwest, rainy Pacific Northwest. And as you can see, lots more. And we are getting ripe ones. There's one that's got a blemish on it, but ripening. And again, these are getting a late start this year, but I don't think I would be anywhere near where I am had I not started all the tomatoes ultra early this year. This next couple here are Silets, which is basically a semi-determinate. It gets a little bit taller. It usually produces very well for this climate. I had some good production out of it earlier on, but lately it's really slowed down, and I'm not seeing a lot of new fruit sets, so I'm not sure what's happening with that one. And then you're back to a couple more Legends over here, and again, they're doing fine. Not quite as heavily loaded as the other ones on the front section there, but they're doing okay. So these are also growing without the benefit of the red plastic. This bed I chose just to leave it alone. I also did not put down soaker hoses. It's been a bit of a pain to water it as a consequence of not having the soaker hose, but I don't think well, it's just difficult to do on a bed like this where I've got other things growing in it to try and do half plastic and half soaker hose. So I just chose not to do that. This next row is entirely devoted to tomatoes. This is the indeterminate bed, and as you can see, some of these plants are quite tall, which is pretty normal for indeterminate tomatoes. So that I've got double cages on some of them, and in this case we've got some of the sun gold cherry tomatoes, and they are producing. We're getting some harvest off of them, have been all for the last month or so actually. They're not exactly just pouring on though. I've got lots of fruit coming, but again, we've been so cool that I'm just getting kind of a little dribble of tomatoes, and that's true with the larger size tomatoes as well. I'm getting ripe ones, and I'm getting enough for our fresh eating, but that's pretty much it this year. I'm just not getting a heavy production. At this point, I'm not going to complain. Given that we've had such a cool summer, the fact that I'm getting production at all is a little bit short of a miracle, and I'll take my winnings where I can. So we're enjoying them, and I'm trying to keep them going. We've got some Defiant here. This is a new variety that I'm trying this year, and it's been, next to the Legend, probably the most productive for me this year. It was the first to produce ripe fruit, actually. Had a little slowdown on the production. I had a flush of new growth, but I've got, as you can see, lots of flower and fruit set that's going on. So hopefully there's some young tomatoes, so we'll see. And then next to the Defiant are several Market Miracles, which is a variety that I tried at the suggestion of Daphne from Daphne's Dandelions, and they have been, last year, were actually a really good producer for me. This year they're not producing at all, and I've got lots of flower and like it wants to produce, but I'm not getting fruit set, and so I'm not quite sure what's going on with these plants. Unfortunately, they're occupying a lot of space and not producing. I don't think I'm going to actually grow them next year, just because I just don't have that space to devote, or at least not this much. So if I do grow them, I'm probably going to grow just one or two instead of 5 plants like I had this year. That way, if they don't produce well again, I'm not out so much bed space. I really need every bit of area in my garden to produce as heavily as possible. And while I don't mind experimenting a little bit, I just really can't have large sections of the garden used up with either plants I don't know much about, or ones that aren't been producing well for me in the recent past. Okay, so that's the tomato alley, and again, this one has soaker hoses, although I have to kind of watch it. They don't always do such a great job, and I do come by and do some additional watering periodically to make sure they're really deeply watered. And then it also has the red plastic under it, which I do believe really makes a difference on the health of the plants, especially in my cool climate. The reflection back of heat and the infrared, I think, makes a difference on how the plants grow and respond.